Welcome to the Uncommon CEO podcast, where we unpack the mindset, skills, and wisdom it takes to become an uncommon leader in a common world. With your host, the Uncommon CEO himself, Andrew Smart.
Welcome to another week of the Uncommon CEO podcast. How's life in your world, Andrew?
Matt, life is good. We are just, rolling away, staying busy. How about yourself?
Oh, all is well. I had my son had his first basketball game over the weekend, and despite what I saw in the team's practice, it ended up winning both games, which was, I think, a true surprise to everybody, even up to the coach of the team, that they pulled that one off. But it was exciting to see him play, and all that really mattered at the end of it is that he enjoyed it and wanted to go keep doing it. So
fantastic. So is he playing like on a church league? Is he playing in a youth league?
It's a city league, so
okay.
It has kids 9 and 10 years old from all over the city that no talent required. Some kids are going to be better than others, but it's all just a league based around fellowship and enjoyment, and so far he likes it.
Got it. So they had like a 2 games Saturday, huh?
They did. They play a 3-on-3 half-court game, and then they go up against the winners play each other, and the teams that dropped the first game play each other. And, I wouldn't say there were no tears or fall downs or glasses getting knocked off, but I think at the end everybody had a pretty darn good time.
Did you grow up playing basketball?
I did, yeah. I always played, church league for several years there, but more so, and I was talking to my son and my wife about that, in the driveway, basketball was life growing up, whether you were playing 21 or just gathering across the street. And it was whoever in the neighborhood's goal you could lower down to slam dunk size
Right.
Have dunk competitions against each other. So, yeah.
My son and all his buddies, they do that to this day. So.
Oh, yeah. That was always one of I liked all the sports, but, yeah, basketball I got a kick out of.
Yeah, I played church league basketball. Basketball was never my great skill in athletics, but I did play church league. I was big enough, they put you in the center, just stay low, kind of knock some people around.
Mm-hmm.
What I found funny about church league can get a little violent.
Surprisingly, so there's some trash talk in church league. I remember doing
the parents get a little violent in church league.
Yeah, there was some raised voices at this weekend's game, but I remember that growing up in church league, Y league, whatever as well. Parents get passionate about it. They want to see their kids, whether it's living post vicarious through them or whether it's just wanting to see them do their best. Or
I'm not sure that the love and faith was always shared well in church league basketball.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
Right. But definitely some strong competition. Watched some good competition in football over the weekend. I'm sure you did as well.
Yeah, I caught all the games. Some of them a little more competition than others. Some required coming over adversity, and some just people had trouble keeping their wits about them. But
yeah, well, that's kind of how the games go. It doesn't matter what sport you're playing. The game of life is about overcoming, and we've talked about that adversity, and we've talked about that life, and kind of my word for the year is discipline.
Mm-hmm.
That in order to have a productive life, a full life, it requires discipline. It requires the ability to overcome the setbacks of life, and requires flexibility. Right? We talked about flexibility, and so that when we have things in life, the obstacles in life, how do we handle that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, today I want to talk about intelligence. And when you hear that word intelligence, Matt, what automatically comes to your mind?
Smart.
Smart.
Ironic considering the podcast we're on and the host's name. But yeah, right. Absolutely. People being book smart is what comes to mind first.
So naturally, we tend to think of intelligence as someone who is book smart. When we were growing up, you might have remembered, I remember that we threw out this term IQ.
Yeah.
That this person had a high IQ. It was, growing up, that was actually a test that many people would take, that they would take this test and get this score, and it would reveal, hey, that they had this level of IQ. If you were over 100 and some odd percent IQ, you would be considered highly intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
If you were below this certain number, you were considered not very intelligent. And so, did you ever take an IQ test?
That's a funny question. I always wondered that. My understanding was that I had that testing when I was a kid and my parents wouldn't share the results with me. So I'll need to hit them up for those numbers there because I was always curious. Like I wanted to know where I stood. I think it's somewhere 160 is where you get into that genius level there.
160 is considered extremely smart.
Yeah. So I was always curious. I don't think I'm there by any stretch. Don't get me wrong. I am definitely curious. Maybe they didn't want me to get a big head, or maybe they're like, we can't let this guy know that he's like a 84.
Right,
so yeah,
right.
Who knows?
Matt, I'm sure you're above an 84.
Okay, I hope so.
I'm pretty sure you're above an 84. It's they don't do that test as much today, or they've quote shifted in how they do those tests today. It's not something that we focus on as measuring. It's kind of like the SAT.
Mm-hmm.
When you and I were coming along, getting into college, ACT, SAT, those were very important metrics to getting into college.
Mm-hmm.
Today, they're still a viable metric. They are still used, but they're not weighted today like they were when we went into school. Matter of fact, many schools don't even require them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't the same way when we went to school. We were going to school. That was a big deal.
Yeah, I think there's a minimum threshold at a lot of schools that you wouldn't get in unless you hit at least an 1100 or whatever it was at the time.
That's exactly right. I remember having to take the test. I mean, you took the pre-test,
Mm-hmm.
and then you had the main test, and so I had to take it a few times. I wasn't a great test taker. And there were reasons why. Like I told you, I dealt with a little mild dyslexia, and I needed more time to take tests because as I would tend to get more focused on the amount. When I think we had about 3 hours we could take those tests,
Mm-hmm.
and because I needed more time, I would get frustrated and tended to rush. And when you rush, it's kind of like, well, you start just scribbling
Yeah,
in
I probably
answers.
did the same. Yep.
And so that ended up causing me to not test well. And so I didn't really score that well on the SAT. Fortunately, I scored high enough to qualify, and I played sports. So if you played sports and you could qualify under NCAA regulation, you could get into school.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was been required to be a normal qualification for just an average college student, I probably wouldn't have got into Clemson University.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I know, based on today's standard, I would not have gotten into Clemson University.
They have a pretty high bar now.
They do. It's truly amazing how it's an ongoing joke. Many of the board members I sit on with IPTE that many of them say, "Yeah, we wouldn't got in either." So but the point of going to the IQ, it's in how we've looked at intelligence. It's been an evolution in time of how we measure intelligence. Intelligence is important. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I look at intelligence as we look at a CEO and a leadership deal in business, intelligence matters, right?
No, absolutely.
I mean, it's hard to lead people and to achieve results. It's hard to do that if you have people who have a low level of understanding things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we go to hire people, and we've talked about, what does it mean to hire and fire? But when you go to hire people, you're looking at people that should come to the table with a level of knowledge, right?
Yeah, you need it.
A level of skill, of comprehension of these areas that we need as an organization. And not just what we need, but a level that's going to take us beyond what we need, right?
Yeah, I mean, they need to. You got to look for the person that fills the role as you could see it become. So not everybody needs to have the same level of intelligence to have a job, but there's a certain level you have to meet to be successful.
Well, we're hiring, that we have different levels of workers. I mean, when I'm looking at a line worker, or if we're in our manufacturing plants and we need someone to stack off cases of product, or we need someone to work a certain level of production line, the level of quote intelligence is at a lower level than what we need for someone in a marketing department or an accounting department or an HR department, right?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I mean it's a fact. I mean there is just a different level that's needed at these different positions, and at the higher you go, you need different levels of skills. Okay, we know that from just a basic intellectual side, an intellectual quotient of what we need, but that's just the intellectual side. That's a basic. But what we need more today beyond that is the quote EQ. And EQ is emotional intelligence. And in today's world, that is being studied more than, quote, the basic study of intellect on the IQ test, emotional intelligence. And what we're trying to work harder on is when we go to look at individuals and people that we want to hire is, okay, you come to the table with these skills that are, are in all these areas that you show that you had the intellect of these skills, but do you possess the emotional intellect? And so let's talk a little about what is the emotional quotient of what is the emotional intellect that we're talking about?
Sure.
So when I throw emotional intellect to you, Matt, what are we talking about here?
Oh, it's people that can read situations, people that have relational skills beyond just the intellectual side of things. A lot of times you hear about people that have social skills as opposed to, or sometimes you can conflate intellect with the lack of social skills. So being able to balance those two out is increasingly more important in finding well-rounded individuals that know how to interact with others and be able to be productive in tandem alongside other folks.
So it's not good enough today just to hire people who have a level of intellect to do a job. You see, we work in environments where you're working with others. Okay, if you come to the table and you understand the responsibility of the role, but you can't relate to other people, there's a problem, right?
Yeah, you're never going to move the ball down the court, for a sports analogy's sake, unless you're doing it as a team. Nobody in a silo is going to be effective in an organization, and without EQ, you're going to probably end up in a siloed role.
But it happens quite often. When there is a lack of an emotional connection, when you're working with people and you have zero ability to relate in an emotional way, you can never achieve the results as an organization that you need to achieve. When you have team members that don't respond well together because there's no emotional bond at any level, there's a problem. And quite frankly, Matt, I've experienced it. I know you've experienced it. There's nothing worse than when you're trying to work with a team member that you know is intelligent, but you don't really know where they stand because they don't respond in any way. You get no emotional feedback from this person.
Sure. Yeah, you got to have both. If you're all emotional, but you're a total numbskull, you're not going to really be able to lead others or be very successful at your job. If you're strictly, a genius with no social skills, you're also going to struggle.
Well, we talk about in this organization, we talk about serving and connecting, right? Okay. In the serving mindset, serving is always about others, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to serve others that you can't connect with. Okay, and so when you lack an emotional connection, you can't really serve, because serving is about getting to know others. I can't serve you, Matt, well if I don't understand you, right?
Yeah.
And you can't serve me well if you don't understand me. And this is where connection and connection's all in emotion.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in intellect, it's in emotion. And so where we have to work on is where is our level of emotional connection. It's not just in business. It's in all levels of relationship.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a marriage with no emotional connection, what kind of marriage you got?
Oh, it's a dead marriage.
You're at best just existing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you take emotion out of any relationship, you don't have a true relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I always make the context that people think that they have true relationship over social media is a fallacy.
Mm-hmm.
There's no true relationship on social media. You don't have a true connection with someone over social media. You might think you do, but it's impossible. You can't have a true human bond with someone in social media. And so, because there's no way to truly bond over a computer, is there?
Not that I know of.
Or an iPhone. I mean, it's kind of it's what we go back to. It's why we can get confused sometimes in texts and emails.
Mm-hmm.
It's why that when you get a text from someone and all of a sudden you might get a little out of whack because you really don't understand what they mean when they said it, right?
Well, it's because you're trying to introduce emotion to the written word in that scenario. We run into that all the time where something's on paper, you're like, what do they mean by that? You know, you fill in the blanks for the emotion because it's not there.
It's happened to me many times. You know, that someone has sent me a text and I'm reading the text and I'm like, what do they really mean?
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden my mind starts running into a bunch of different places. And then by the time that I can connect with this person and start communicating with them, I find out that that's not real. Where my mind went was not what they really meant. And then we spend an hour plus kind of dissecting and regathering our spot to, and that's what happens in life when we operate that way. So this is why emotional intelligence and emotional connection is so critical for success in life and business, and everything. Because when you lack that, people can't operate at high levels.
Mm-hmm.
And so we understand that having intellect, the basic IQ is critical because, hey, smart matters, meaning that just basic intellect smart matters. But this emotional connection is important. And I think that we struggle in today's time with our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and another piece of that is what you just said earlier. You can't just live in your emotions either.
No, absolutely. It's got to be a balance.
Yes. And so the last, quantum that I want to live in is that AQ.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked to you about this before, and it goes to a podcast that we shared when we talked about that flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
Because AQ is really, in my opinion, the most important for success in leadership and business.
Mm-hmm.
This is where you find leaders who are the most successful.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I see when we talk about uncommon people, uncommon CEO leadership, they're the ones, from my perspective, that have the highest level. Candidly, when you look at all of them, they might not have the highest level of IQ. I think they have high EQ, but they definitely have the highest AQ. And AQ is the ability to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
Their ability to adapt to any given situation. Adaptability is the key to success. Someone's ability to adapt to any given issue, situation, whatever comes at them, the ability to adapt at a high level. As things come at us in life and business, as things, change, because we live in an ever-changing world. We could walk into a meeting tomorrow and just something crazy happens.
Mm-hmm.
We could walk in, it's kind of you and I were talking, just this morning, and and I'd asked you a question about one of our major clients,
Mm-hmm.
and you were telling me, hey, well, the orders came in a lot larger than we expected, right?
Yeah.
And we were talking about how some changes had to be made, and well, the ability to adapt to that issue is critical.
Yeah. The initial is a knee jerk. Everybody goes, oh my gosh, this is a problem. What do we need to do to fix it? And it's just a couple turns to the left, to come up with some solutions, to adapt, to be flexible. And you can always come up with a solution. It just takes a moment to take a breather and look at it.
That is, the adaptability is the key to the success. I mean, when we know every day something is going to come a little different than what we expect. Something somewhere, and we don't know where that is, but our ability to adapt to the situation, to adapt to the environment, the adaptability is the key to the success. And it is an emotional and an adaptability intelligence that is critical, because too many people lacked that level of intelligence. Things are always going to change.
Mm-hmm.
This is why, when you look at people who are constantly jumping ship all the time everywhere, because they lack it. Mm-hmm. Because they don't realize that things are always going to change. When they go to one ship to the other, do they not think that that's going to change too? I mean, if you left this business right here today and you went to business down the street, give it another year down there, it's going to change over there too.
Yeah, it's Sisyphus rolling the rock up the hill just for it to come right back down on him each time.
It's realizing that everything changes. If you don't learn to adapt and change, and if you don't grow there, then you're going to constantly deal with this internal issue, because everything is going to change. You have to grow in your intelligence of adaptability. And it starts with on down the line, okay? What's my level of just basic intelligence? Where's my emotion? And then where's my adaptability? If you can hone all three of those in, you can be highly effective.
Mm-hmm.
But if you lack, you can have, your level of, that quote, IQ doesn't have to be too high. You got to have enough.
Yeah.
You got to have enough to be able to operate. But if you lack the other two, if you really, really lack in the other two, you're going to have a huge problem. Because if you lack in emotional intelligence and adaptability, it doesn't matter how smart you are. It really doesn't. You could have a 190 IQ. You could have a 190. But if you lack emotional intelligence and adaptability, you're not going to be able to achieve it.
Because you're not going to problem solve. Everything's going to be a mathematical mind approach to.
You're going to be the smartest loser out there.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to be. You're going to be the smartest loser out there. I'll never forget a mentor of mine at a young age. He was a middle school teacher of mine. He's no longer living, but this guy was a phenomenal teacher. He was more than that. He was a coach. He was a mentor. His name was Maxie Perche. He was a phenomenal man. He spent his life really developing young men. He was an African-American man who was former football player in the National League, played for the Houston Oilers. If you remember those.
That's way back when.
Yeah,
sure.
Houston Oilers. But this guy was a larger-than-life type of guy. He really influenced a lot of young, black males. Really, he really spent his life, making a difference. And so he really, emphasized these type of qualities, and he taught me these things at a young life. I remember he had these little wolf, little statues, little wolves on his desk, and he always tell me, he said, Andrew, a lone wolf, hunts best. And I never really understood what he was trying to say of that at a young age, with a lone wolf humps desk, because I always thought wolves hunt packs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't trying to say that wolves don't, do well hunting packs. But what he was trying to emphasize was, when you're the wolf, you want to be the smartest and the best in that pack. You want to be the leader of that pack. You want to be the, and so he, when I look back and I think about that type of mentality and leadership, from this type of guy, I learned that, at a young age from that type of mentor, of how to have that type of emotional intelligence. I mean, this guy, I don't know if you can do that to this day. This guy, literally in the classroom, he used to make us do push-ups. He used to.
Haven't seen that happen or hear about it from my kids.
He used to. Anybody who ever had this guy, he used to, when a kid would act up, he'd put his hand in his face and said, "Don't be a hero." Mm-hmm. He would do funny things. I was one of his aides. I had him for 6th, 7th grade, 6th and 7th, and for 8th, I was his aide. And me and another guy, he would send us on missions to the teachers' lounge, and to get to like go get a snack or something. And he said, "You can get yourself a snack too, but if you get caught, you're on your own."
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so
it was a rogue mission, Black Ops.
It was exactly that. Mm-hmm. It was exactly that. But I mean, but he was teaching us stuff at the same time. But yeah, just learning, those kind of skills at a young age. And so yeah, I mean, having these type of skills of intelligence are critical for success. And to be a highly effective leader, influencer, you got to have this level of intelligence.
So how do you identify EQ and AQ specifically in people you're bringing in? The tricky part about hiring is you get an interview, maybe two, a little FaceTime. You got to determine, is this person going to be the right fit for our organization?
Good question. Fortunately, on EQ, there are some good tests that you can out there now that you can give for EQ. I mean, are they definitive? No. I mean, the only thing definitive is once you start working with people to see how they respond. So there's some good testing out there that you can see how people respond to a situation, things. Mm-hmm. So there's some, the adaptability one. I think that's just until you get people into an environment, into a situation, you don't know until you're in it. How will they respond once they're thrown into situations, hot LZs, different kind of things that what's their ability to respond? Mm-hmm. And that you don't know. I mean, like I said, the IQ thing, they come in with a level of intelligence. You can ask questions, you can assess, you can do all those kind of things. The emotional side, we can ask questions, we can assess. Adaptability is a response to the situations.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. So how can you, on a day-to-day basis, work on your own AQ?
Something I've been trying to work on kind of my whole journey. I mean, I think early on in my journey, I didn't know the term AQ. I think not knowing the term, I think it became a journey of life circumstances, failures that I went through. So I think AQ was something I have developed over circumstances I've gone through that have allowed me to evolve into a stronger AQ. That as I've gone through setbacks, failures, personally, professionally, relationally, all these kind of things that you go through has allowed me to evolve in that. And as you evolve in that, you get stronger. Mm-hmm. And you're able to look at things differently. So a lot of times when I have situational things come at us, for me, I can look at things that other people look at as a challenge. I can look at them like, that's not that big of a deal. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you a story on that. When we were at the end of the year doing leadership review, or when I was doing some of my senior staff reviews, I had one of my senior staff members talk about one of the challenges that she was having in one of the areas that I needed her to work on. And I said to this particular person, hey, let's walk through this a little bit. I mean, because you're seeing this as a very difficult situation. And what it was some of the negotiations we needed with some particular supply stuff. And so, and I said to this person, I said, you've been through some tough things in life. Okay. You've gone through some personal challenges. And I don't want to go into any details, but there were some really tough personal challenges. And I mean, candidly speaking, I mean, you went through those challenges and overcame some physical and relational, really tough stuff. And you're sitting here telling me this little situation here on this business front, you're like comparing this to that. I said, that's a walk in the park compared to this. Mm-hmm. And what I was basically saying is all perspective, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes that 10,000-foot view will do you a lot of good.
Yeah. I mean, and so I was saying, look, adapt your mind of thinking. Wait a minute. I overcame something at this level that was way harder. So don't look at that. If I can overcome this, that's nothing. And that's what I was telling her, that, this thing that she thought was hard, I'm sitting there telling, to me, what you're looking at that's hard, it's nothing.
Mm-hmm. It's got to be a balance. It's almost like a 3-part Venn diagram of IQ, EQ, AQ. How do you strike that balance or become more, more aware and cognizant that there needs to be a balance? What are some steps you can take?
In business and in life, I mean, I think the intelligence side, okay, and I'm really all three, okay. The intelligence side is, okay, that you got to work on all three. So basic intelligence is, okay, what am I doing to evolve that? What am I working on? What am I reading? I mean, basic intelligence is a front lobe work. Mm-hmm. And so you can't work on your front lobe if you're not studying. So that's just a basic, I'm going to work on my level of intelligence. If you want to get, quote, intellectual smarter, Matt, okay, well, you've got to study, right? Mm-hmm. Well, okay, that's just a basic. If you don't read anything, if you don't study anything, you're not going to get any smarter, right?
No. Okay, you might even get dumber.
Well, you will get dumber. Mm-hmm. Technically, you will. If it's a fact, if all you did was do nothing and watch TV, what's going to happen to your brain?
If you've seen the movie Idiocracy, you'll get dumber and dumber generation after generation.
And you know what? There's people out there that want you to get dumber and dumber. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a whole commitment to it.
True.
Okay, so no, that's a basic. If you don't understand that you got to do some work to get smarter that way, then it's going to be real hard to get the rest of it. So you got to get smarter in that way. But it's also the other way. So there are people who are all committed to the intellectual smart. The emotional intelligence is taking it a little farther, because here's where emotional intelligence lies. We say the intellectual intelligence is in that front lobe. It's in that small. The emotional intelligence is in a deeper part of our brain. And the deeper part of our brain of emotional intelligence, you see, there's a lot of stuff in our brain. Emotional intelligence requires us to do some what we call reflective thought. Mm-hmm. It requires us to go into a deeper chasm of our mind. And in reflective thought, it requires us to look at problems, okay? Problems within ourselves. So if I can't connect with other people, if I'm not being relatable with other people, then the deeper problem might be me, right? Mm-hmm. That's where I use the book Winning with People. That's where the mirror principle comes into play. Whenever you see a problem, the first thing that you should evaluate is, are you the problem?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the mirror principle is in play. That's the reflective thought. And this is where the beginning stage of emotional intelligence comes into play. Am I strong enough to look at me and say, am I the issue? That's the mirror principle, the deeper thought. This is emotional. Only an emotional, intelligent person can do that. People who are not emotionally intelligent cannot do deep work. People who are not emotionally intelligent, you know what they do?
They just point the finger.
They project.
At everybody else.
They do exactly what you're talking about. They project. They are the people who project everything, and that is an emotional, intelligent person automatically recognizes I've got to do deep work. Then once you realize that, and once you're working on that stage, then you can go right over to the AQ of adaptability. Okay, you got that emotional ability, then you got adaptability. And when you adapt, means I got to evolve, right?
Mm-hmm.
So your intellect, your emotion, and adaptability. I got to evolve. Evolve means change, right? But if you haven't worked on this stage of IQ that goes to the EQ of emotion, then you don't think you have to change one damn thing, do you?
Nope. Everybody else is the problem.
Yeah, but those two lead to the final stage that says, I've got to evolve and change. I have to adapt. I got to change to the circumstance. I got to change my way of communicating with Matt or talking with Matt. I got to listen more to Matt. I got to stop doing all the talking. You see where I'm going here?
Sure. It's all an inside job.
Correct. And to evolve, it leads to the adaptability of I've got to do it differently. And if you can apply all those things, you can be highly effective. Mm-hmm. You can grow in the way that we want to grow. If you want to be uncommon. And uncommon people, uncommon leaders, they get that. They know that it's always an inside job. It starts with the mind and ends with the mind. Every day.
So we like to wrap up with something called fourth and goal, the one key takeaway. So how do you make it a focus and an inside job to improve in these areas? Or what would you want our listeners to take away from today's show?
What I would want our listeners to take away from today's show is that if you want to be highly effective, if you want to be your best, then you have to look at all three of these and you have to apply all three of them. I can tell you how I do it is that one, I do study on the outside. I want to grow my mind. Two, how I deal with emotional intelligence is not just the reflective thought. You have to have people who can speak into you. Mm-hmm. Okay, emotional intelligence isn't about, hey, I'm looking just at myself. Do you have the guts to let someone talk into you? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the whole point of, that's the whole point of why we have therapists today. I mean, you go back 50 years ago and you went to therapy or something like that, something was wrong with you, right? Therapies and coaches, all these kind of things. These are good things in life. You can't be your best. Why do you go to the doctor today?
Well, depends. Some people go just because they're sick. Some people go to stay well.
I would say wellness checks are huge today.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but the mind, okay, everything in your body is run by the mind.
Yeah.
And so if I want to be highly functional, then I want to have my mind at its best. But if you're not working on the mind, how does anything else work right? And so whether that's some type of therapy, coaching, whatever it is, get that engaged in your life. And do it with people who know what they're doing, not your buddy down the street, not your quote best friend, that doesn't know what they're talking about or you think they do. Because I'm always about, don't just give people stuff that they don't understand. Mm-hmm. Give people who are qualified. Then, once you've done that, then focus on adapting to the change. Make changes. Because if you're not willing to make changes, nothing will change. Think about that statement. If you're not willing to make changes, nothing will change.
Thanks for joining us today on the Uncommon CEO podcast. Subscribe to our show wherever you get podcasts. We have video episodes on our YouTube channel and more uncommon wisdom on our social media. Find all our links and resources at uncommonceopodcast.com. For Andrew Smart and all of us here at the Uncommon CEO, stay uncommon.